Did you know that the man that we know as Jesus from the Gospels is actually never called literally Jesus during the days that he walked this earth? Now, let's explore that a bit. The letter J was invented in 1524, which immediately raises questions as to why do we have this? Because his name definitely predates 1524. Now, when I decided to explore this subject, it led me to one of these. This is what they call a Tyndale New Testament, or Tyndale. There was a translation of the Bible before the King James in English, which was called the William Tyndale. But it was only the New Testament and some of the Old Testament. But what's very fascinating is how he decides to write Christ's name. While recording, I found this other variant of the name actually that I had not seen before, which is interesting for later reasons. But we also have Jesus. To me, the most interesting variant is Isu. All of these verses are taken out of the book of Matthew. So when Tyndale decided to translate his New Testament from Greek, he translated Christ's name from these two variants. Now, what's very interesting though is that this isn't actually a variant, it's just including the suffix at the end of the name, which the suffix, it just helps the Greek reader understand context of what Christ is doing in the sentence. It's not actually a part of the name though. So for some reason, when we translated to English, we decided to keep the Greek suffix, which is not a part of the name. So this in Greek is pronounced Yesu. Now, many of you are probably familiar with the name Yeshua. Now, this here is the Aramaic rendering of his name, and this is the Hebrew rendering of his name. Now, what's really interesting is that he is not able to be called Yeshua with this variant here, because due to the letters that are included, it makes it impossible for this name to actually say Yeshua in the Hebrew variant. Now, also on the Hebrew variant, there's something really amazing going on with these two letters here. Now, Hebrew is written from right to left, so that means that these are actually the last two letters of his name. So every Hebrew letter represents an idea. For example, the letter Shin here actually represents teeth or tooth, which is more obvious in its ancient Paleo-Hebrew variant here that I wrote down. Now, the letter Ayin actually represents eye. Now, if you combine these two letters, they make the idea or paint a picture of eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, if you will, which is reminiscent of Exodus 21:24, which is where God the Father declares that eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth would be a form of judgment that would be applied onto people. Now, away from that idea though, in the book of John it says in verse 22, chapter 5, that the Father would give all authority and judgment to the Son to judge the earth. Now, it's very interesting that this idea would actually be represented in his Hebrew name. To take this concept into a deeper level, something that's very beautiful about his Hebrew name specifically is that if you were to take it and you were to compare it to the Father's name in Hebrew, they're like identical other than those last few letters, meaning that these last two letters being the only difference, which are in a way declaring judgment, It's like a baton pass to Christ, saying that he is the judge of the earth in his name. I'm looking at the name. Another question that came to mind was that how did we go from this to Joshua, as there's a lot of people that render this name as something that says Yahashua. Now, the thing is that if you were to have the He in this name be silent, which sometimes it can be silent, you would get something like Yahshua, which if you were to take the J here in Joshua and replace it with a Y, you would get Yahshua, which is very basic. And surprisingly, there is further evidence to suggest that his name could be Yahshua, such as in Latin. Now, that is what I believe that his name actually was, but that doesn't mean that I am correct. I wanted to just present all the information that I could to help you come to your own conclusion. With all these different variants, what do we call him? Ultimately, that is up to you. He seems to respond to all of these variants. I've seen so many beautiful testimonies spoken in the name of Jesus. We've been hearing it for a long time. Tradition tells us, stick with this name. However, I have come to believe that Yahshua is the variant that I would like to stay with. Now, ultimately, what matters most is who are we talking about? And all of these names represent the same Son of God.